Over the last few years, we've come across a lot of property investors who've come to us and asked us, how can I get my negatively geared property and turn it into a positive cash flow property? Now, why would you want to do this? Because often people have bought their property knowing it was going to be negatively geared. Most of the time people buy these negatively geared properties with a intention of future growth. So they've often been advised about certain areas that they're going to enjoy long-term growth, and in the meantime the negatively gearing will be tax deductible. This is valid, but there's some challenges that we have with it. First of all is that you need to have some income to maintain these properties. So most people are using the income from their job to maintain these long-term growth properties, which is fine. But when you're paying every month more money than what you're getting in from rental income, then obviously there's going to be a limit to how many of these properties that you can maintain, because your income is only so much from your job. And the second challenge that there is with this is that it isn't necessarily guaranteed that you are going to enjoy this growth. And we've had countless amount of stories. Sometimes it's quite emotional, where people have bought in a certain area with the hope of growth, and what's happened is actually it's gone upside down, so that they owe more money to the bank than what the property is now worth. And in that case, then there's really only two things that they can do, or three things. First is that they just wait and pay it off and hope that it'll go up in value. The second thing is that what we've heard so many times, and I've spoken to a lot of brokers, because we work with a lot of mortgage brokers, who say, oh, I wish I'd met you before I was speaking to this particular client, because they had to sell their property and make a loss, which is completely counteractive to what you want to achieve. And then the third option, obviously, is to give us a call, and we can show you how that we can solve this problem, so that this upside down property, you can actually sell it for the price that you want, and you can enjoy a positive cash flow in the meantime every week coming into your bank account. And so in order to do this, I'll give you an example of someone that we recently helped that bought a property in the Central Coast. They were given the advice that this property was going to go up, in this area 10% per year for the next 10 years. You're going to get amazing growth. And so they had the property for 4 years, hoping that by 4 years you would have hoped for some results. And what had happened is that it was completely upside down. They had a much bigger loan than what the property could possibly be sold for. And so they hadn't achieved what they wanted to achieve, and they had this expense every week. So what we did is we came in and we explained to them that we could introduce a tenant that would, rather than paying an amount that would be less than what their bank loan would be, this tenant would pay over and above what their bank repayments would be. Now this is quite unusual, because usually it's the other way around, right? So why would a tenant want to pay over and above what a normal tenant would be? And the reason is that because in the last few years, the market volatility, world financial crisis, changes in legislation for employment, all sorts of things, tightening of the banks, it's created quite a large group of people who fall into the gap. People who, they want to own their own home. They can afford to own their own home. But for whatever reason, they just can't get a bank loan. It might be that they have a small credit default, they don't have quite enough deposit, their income is not as stable as what the banks would like. And what we do is we give it a fair go to these people. We get them into the house, they pay a small deposit, and they, rather than paying off a bank loan, they're paying the property owner. Now, in order to do this, it might be something that you haven't heard before. ASIC has actually come in and been quite stringent about this process, and you have to have a Australian credit license to do this. So if you have any queries, please click the link below and you'll see some information about ASIC credit licensing. So So that's basically, how we help people. And the advantage to the property owner is, well, it's tremendous because, first of all, he got the price that he wanted. There's no way he could have got that price if it had been just a normal sale. You're giving an opportunity to a person and they're happy to pay, slightly more. Obviously not, twice as much, but slightly more than what, a normal sale would be. Second advantage is that he got his positive cash flow every week. Money was going into his pocket every week rather than out. And lastly is that down the line, he's guaranteed a nice big payout of, money later on when, person decides to go over to the bank rather than paying him. So, there's enormous, advantage for this particular property owner, but there's also an advantage for the buyer, which is, it's a really good feeling when you can help both parties because we're giving a fair go to the buyer or the tenant. Somebody who would have, wouldn't have been able to get a bank loan ordinarily and would have had to wait, a lot longer. By the time they were ready to get a bank loan, it would have been even more expensive than what they were buying the property for, today. And so, you've helped the seller, you've helped the buyer, everyone wins. And so this is probably something that's new to you that you haven't heard of before. And your own particular property is obviously an individual case. So we'd love to hear about, what's happening with your property and what do you want to achieve with your portfolio, and can we take the properties that you have now and turn them into something with more potential.